Hi, I'd like to show you something cool you can do with Marimo. What I've got here is a Marimo notebook in which I'm rendering HTML, and I'm using a front-end library called Datastar to bring in its features, top of which is reactive signals that allow you to um, basically manipulate data on the page and keep track of state. So what I've got here is a little demonstration showing connected users, and I'm displaying that by rendering it directly inside the Marimo notebook. And then I've got it back here as well because I'm taking the view that is defined in the Marimo notebook, and since I have it reusable here, I can import it into my backend and then make use of it. I can just go to the page. So what we are seeing here is the exact same thing that's being rendered over here. And then when I change the state by moving away from the page, the connected users changes in both places at the same time because it's all being kept in sync by the backend. And besides backend state, you can also have front-end state that's controlled by signals as well. So I've got text input here, and when I type something, it changes the state of the signal on the front end, this input signal. And besides that, uh, I'd like to demonstrate how I'm actually doing this. So in this file, I've got what is essentially some setup code. I'm importing htpy, which is a library that allows you to use Python code directly as HTML. It's sort of like Hiccup for Clojure, sort of just making Python into a DSL for HTML markup. And this function right here is what I'm using to do that. This setup rendering function makes use of Marimo's ability to render HTML, and then it just calls the HTML dunder on the htpy element or whatever you put in. And then I'm adding those or that function to the htpy element and void element to their display method, which in Marimo means basically if you want to show something, you got to have a display method to do it. And then over here, I've got I'm defining the Datastar script so that I can then write it to a file. This function right here will write it to a file, and then in Marimo you can import arbitrary HTML head files using this feature up here. That brings in Datastar, and that allows everything here to work. Another cool thing you can do with htpy rendering is you can do reactive Python code. Like this is attaching text size to the value of this slider, and text size is being used for the rendering of this htpy element, this div, where font size is attached to the value there. So you can then use Marimo's built-in things to change the rendering. So in this file is where the magic actually happens. We're importing everything we need, like setup rendering, and we're doing it all inside the setup cell so that we can then use whatever code we define down here in other Python files inside the actual controller file where the app is defined. I'm using Sanic, but you could use other backends like fast HTML or any Starlet-based backend. And then in base here, I'm defining just the view, and I also am giving it a keyword argument color, which we'll get to later. So Marimo actually does have support for reactive signals in a way. It's setting the value of actual Python variables, and then you can change those variables, and those will be automatically re-rendered. Like you can see when I change the value of this and then hit enter, it shows you that the actual cell is being reevaluated and re-rendered right here. So that's how you do that with Marimo's built-in signals. But then these signals are based purely on front-end JavaScript, purely on importing the Datastar head HTML right up here. So that is how the reactive front-end signals works. But the back-end signals are more interesting because what I've got here is a call to an updates endpoint that sends down an event stream that continually sends down the value of these other signals. It looks like it's out of sync right now because the back-end code is kind of janky, but it mostly stays in sync. It's not necessarily the it's just how I coded the backend, not the best demonstration. But Datastar signals are actually only on the front end. Of course, you can send their values back to the back end, and then that's how this is all working. It's all based off of a signal called user count, and that's what's being demonstrated here. I'm setting the value of this element down here to the signals.json using the data text attribute. And it just renders plainly, like as if it's actually your front end. So, and you can also make use of Marimo's many widgets for changing input and reactive variables. So whenever I interact with the color picker widget here, it's actually going to re-render the HTML up here so I can interact with it on both ends from Python or from the front end, and it works perfectly. So why am I showing you this? I'm trying to make the case that you can credibly do the model view controller paradigm where the model and view is something that you can write directly inside Marimo. You can have your front-end interactivity, and you can even use Python front-end interactivity, which is sort of a strange and new kind of paradigm. But I think it unlocks a lot of abilities for development. And besides that, of course, you've got your front-end interactivity. That makes it easy to debug exactly what's being done inside your front end. So here's the back-end code. It's where the magic is actually happening. It's where the cores configuration is happening so that I can actually connect from Marimo directly to this web app being served on a different host. And then I'm using this middleware to define which sessions are which, and then using signals to update what's what. And I'm actually using an event bus pattern with this updates stream so that I only have one actual view that's being sent down, and it's just updating this one signal, the user count signal, and that's how it's being done. So what have we learned? We've learned that you can do htpy rendering directly inside Marimo just by setting the display method on the element and void element. We've also learned that you can create a backend that makes use of Datastar to create an interactive application directly inside a Marimo notebook. That means that you can develop at least your model and your view directly inside Marimo, and then your controller method can be something simple that just has like an event bus that just takes requests and sends down updates through this one endpoint. If you found that useful, go ahead and like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye.